Hey everybody, it's your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete here, and this is another episode in my hard debate series with my good buddy Carlin. As you know, we're debating a wide array of topics in the horror genre. Again, after you watch my video, please go to Carlin's channel, link in the description, watch his video. He'll have a community tab on his page. If you'd like to vote on who you think had the better argument, you don't have to. It's all for good fun. You can vote for him, you can vote for me, and there is a tie option if you feel we both did a good job. Well, this week we're discussing what is the most overrated horror franchise. Now, before I start, remember these are opinions. Opinions really can't be wrong. We all say things differently, and that's what I think makes life really interesting. So nothing's really wrong on a bad opinion, and it is okay to disagree. That's what Carl and I like to prove with this series. So my selection for the most overrated franchise in horror, I guess you can say, is controversial. Those who know me well, it's going to become no surprise to them. It's the Scream franchise. I liked the first film, but I really didn't enjoy the other films in the franchise, and these are some of my reasons why. Now, I think the meta approach to Scream really wears thin after a while. Now, the original Scream was kind of groundbreaking in the self-awareness and the commentary it put on your typical horror genre tropes. But I think as the franchises continued, that meta approach really became repetitive and really less effective because it was almost like, okay, what are they going to reference next? The later sequels to me are so meta, they're only a few steps away from the Scary Movie franchise. And none of the sequels even come close to the quality of the original. Another YouTuber I enjoy watching, Stitch Together Pictures, when there's a meta reference in a movie, he'll awfully look at the camera and go, because reference. And that's the way I feel it is with a lot of these Scream movies. They're putting in a reference, hey, let's just make a reference just to let people know these horror movies exist in this universe. But it just gets older and older. They just keep doing the same gag, so to speak, over and over again. That's how I feel about all the rest of the sequels in the franchise. Let's just put a reference into a better movie to let people know that movie exists. Okay, but what about the plot and the base for your movie? I don't think you really have much else to say, because there's almost like a parody aspect to these films, and it takes away from any menacing or frightening presence that a traditional horror film really has. Another issue I kind of have with the rest of the movies in the Scream franchise is I think the storyline really is kind of basic. You know, there's no fresh perspective with these films. They just kind of follow the same basic structure, you know, with similar plot twists and reveals. You know, every film, I think the viewer is just wondering who the killer is and why they are killing. And like, yeah, some of the later films, they actually changed the location, but it's just the same thing over again. Who's the killer? Why are they killing? And normally the motivations for these killings are really lackluster. Now, so this franchise tried to blend horror and comedy, and that can be really difficult. But I think as we got past more and more films, the balance really became unbalanced, I should say. It didn't really work as well. There's no really scary elements in these films, nothing really that builds tension. You know, when you have your killer taking pratfalls only to get up again and then violently kill somebody, it just makes the whole concept of a threatening killer non-existent, which is going to bring us to talking about Ghostface now. Ghostface is one of the least intimidating killers in the genre of horror. And it doesn't make sense of some of the damage that Ghostface takes, and then he still gets up. Again, I made this reference when I covered the Scream movies on my Nails in a Coffin series. They almost treat the Ghostface costume as it's the costume from The Greatest American Hero. You know, he gets he can just keep taking damage and get back up again, but he still is tripping over stuff, and it just comes out rather silly to me. I think the character Ghostface himself lacks depth or any, you know, complexity that you get with normal horror memorable villains, like the big ones that we always talk about. You know, now granted, the Ghostface persona has been taken on by different characters, all different characters actually, throughout those movies, and to me, that gives an inconsistent development of this horror villain. I mentioned earlier, the motivations for the killings are one of my biggest issues with this franchise. Some people killed because they thought it would lead to fame, or because they had poopy in their pants, or they wanted revenge because you loved that person more than you loved me, and I didn't get enough hugs as a child. It kind of was lame. That's not really, it's just like kind of lame motivations. What can we shoehorn in to give motivations for this character to be killing their friends and potential family members. Like, what are the motivations? And they really are just thin. In Scream 4, I think it was Jill wanted to be famous like Sydney, so she decided to con the other guy into it and, like, hey, let's just start killing people so I can survive and I can be fame. It's just, yeah, I really just don't enjoy it. You know, they compare Ghostface to other horror villains like Freddy or Jason or Michael Myers. He can't even hold a candle to them. I wouldn't even put Ghostface in the top 10 horror villains. Far, far from it. You know, the iconic villains in horror, they have a long history with much more consistent presence across multiple films. And I think they're way more ingrained in the horror culture. And I just don't think Ghostface belongs anywhere near the same conversation as those icons of horror. He's just, most of the time, Ghostface is just an average person with self esteem issues. Continue on to the bash Ghostface. He's just not a scary villain. He doesn't possess any supernatural or extraordinary abilities. He pretty much relies on stalking and just using common weapons. Now, that can work for one or two movies of a franchise, but I think there are 6 films now, definitely a 7th on the way. And I think maybe if they made the Ghostface costume like the costume in Greatest American, make it somewhat supernatural, give him some supernatural abilities, it probably would make the franchise better. But it's just another person putting on this costume and killing for really uninteresting reasons. And it's just they don't seem like a threatening villain when you can like knock him out easily if you just paid attention to what was going on around you. Which is also, I think, most of the victims in this movie, they make inherently dumb to be killed so easily by Ghostface. I'll give you the first movie, for example, when Rose McGowan's character died because she tried to crawl through the doggy door on a garage door. Come on. It's just not interesting to me. They try and beef Ghostface up as this threatening villain, and I would just kind of laugh at him. I don't find him threatening or scary at all. Another thing about these films, like, they're very predictable. Every single movie follows, like, I guess, just the same formula. You get characters killed off one by one, and then they finally reveal the identity of Ghostface, revealed at the end of the movie, and everyone's like, oh, okay, why'd you kill? And they tell everybody, oh, okay, and then they kill Ghostface, and we get a brand new set of Ghostface for the next movie. There's no since everything follows that same storyline, basically, just changing locations. There's really no suspense because you're going to watch the whole movie. You know Ghostface's identity is going to be revealed. It's going to be for some lame reason. They're going to get killed off only to set up another Ghostface in a future movie. They're just really, really predictable in my opinion. Another issue I have is, again, I'm going to bring it up again, is the overemphasis on references. Because as the franchise continued, it kept leaning on references to other better horror movies and pop culture. Now, some people might think that perspective is fresh and new, but I think they're trying too hard to be clever. And instead, they should be developing a more strong, original narrative throughout the entire film, instead of worrying about, hey, how can we stick another reference in here? And I think for a franchise to be really loved, some of the sequels have to be equally as good as the original, maybe even some surpassing. Otherwise, it's just kind of a boring franchise. And arguably, none of the sequels in the Scream franchise can live up to the original. Like I said, the original is great. I really enjoyed it, but none of the sequels can live up to it. And to be a really successful franchise, I think some of the sequels have to be equally as good, but some of them are not really even close, in my opinion. And so that's why, another reason why I just think it's an overrated franchise, because the sequels, I think you keep getting diminishing returns with each one. Again, it's just a personal preference of mine because, horror as a genre is heavily dependent on your own personal taste. I'm a child of the 80s, so I grew up with 80s slashers, Friday the 13th, Halloween, Nightmare on Elm Street, The Burning, Mutilator, best movie of all time, Return of the Living Dead. But with these films, I personally really can't connect with the themes and the characters or the style of the Scream franchise. When the first one came out, I was already in the military, so I was kind of past that whole high school teeny bopper culture that was kind of focused in on that whole 90s culture. I was already in the military, kind of serving, so maybe it just passed over on me. I could just never really connect with any of these films. But that's why I think the Scream franchise is one of the most overrated franchises in horror. I think if you love it, that's fantastic. Love what you love, and I think that's great. I love what I love, and we all get along on it because we have different opinions, which is actually fun times. But let me know in the comments down below what you thought. Do you think Scream is overrated or underrated? Do you find it somewhere in the middle? How do you like the franchise? So thanks for watching. Now please go to Carl's channel, link down in the description, watch his video, and then let us know what you think if you want to choose to vote on the community tab on his page. Did Carlin had the better argument? Did I, or was it a tie? Don't forget to leave your comments down below. We read every single one. I reply to every single one. I love hearing from everybody on the topics that we discuss, because it's not just Carl and I discussing it. It's you all discussing it as well, letting us know what your thoughts on this topic is. That's why I'm having so much fun with this series. Well, I'll see you on Friday for another episode of my Nails in the Coffin series, where we are probably by now in the middle of the Saw franchise. Having a lot of fun covering those movies. I hope you're having fun watching them. Take care of yourselves and each other, and be good to each other. I am your friendly neighborhood Uncle Pete, and remember that with great kills, there must always come great nails.